Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with April. This time, we're going to do a bit of recap for the World Brewers Championship. Most of you already know that we were there, I was there competing, representing Sweden. So I want to share with you guys some ideas, some thoughts, especially reflecting on my own performance and where we actually ended up. Some of you already know that I did a mistake, which normally you should try to avoid when you're doing this kind of competition. The process leading up to the competition was a really interesting one. For the first time in a very long time, I kind of locked myself into the room, didn't have a lot of exposure, didn't talk a lot with other people. I was trying to figure out a way to really make a presentation that felt like it came from me and no one else. And that today is pretty difficult because you get a lot of inspiration, a lot of insights from other people. So for me, that was very important. And I do believe that that resulted in me actually scoring very well. However, I believe that that same process resulted in me doing one mistake leading up basically being disqualified in the competition. So for those of you that don't know, I scored an average of 159 in the first round. Now, that would be high enough to put myself in third place after the first round. First round meaning both open service and compulsory service. Now, that would have been awesome. I would have been in the final, but I did a mistake. I poured 5 grams too little coffee in my cup. Now, why in the world would I do that? Good question. I figured and I practiced and I had an idea. There was a specific cup that I was using. This specific cup had a specific shape. Because of that shape, I wanted to pour exactly 130 milliliters of coffee in that cup. And the minimum volume that is allowed is 120 milliliters. So on practice, I would hit 130 every single time. So the funny part of this story is that it was something that I actually had in mind and something that I did practice to avoid. However, coming up to competition, apparently I poured 115 grams in the cup rather than 130, leaving my total cup score to officially in the competition be 0, right? So it doesn't matter if my score was actually the third highest in the world, I got disqualified. So why did I end up doing this? Well, there's plenty of reasons for that. And I'm gonna tell you that the most significant reason I believe, which is something I've been reflecting on afterwards, is the fact that I did close myself off in the beginning, the fact that I went there without a coach, the fact that I was in a process where I was very much doing this myself, basically took away some very much needed exposure from people that actually have experience of the competitions, right? Whereas if I had an experienced coach, that coach would have within that process told me, Patrik, you're pouring 130 mils, your minimum is 120, there's a risk here, that's stupid, don't do it, just change your cups. Which I most likely also would have done, but since I basically only did my presentations 3 times towards anyone external, and that feedback never came up during those 3 times, it wasn't something that I actually changed, which in hindsight was a big mistake. However, it was a great experience, it was a great process. And most importantly, and I think the main reason why I can live with this and I'm excited to compete again, is the fact that I did learn a lot. And I come back to this again and again and again and again. Competing for me has nothing to do about actually winning, even though I actually always want to win, right? I want to win, the goal is to win, I practice to win. But most importantly, it's about actually learning. And for this, during these last 6 months, I've become such a better brewer because of this process. And you're gonna see the future video journals here are gonna be very focused on brewing, at least the next 3-4 of them. Because of this, because I've actually learned a lot. I learned how to structure the process for compulsory. I had probably the highest compulsory in the competition. I learned how to dial in something on open service as well. So that was the first part of this little talk, which was more concerned about what did I do, how did that go? To kind of sum it up, I went up, I did everything the way I supposed to do. Basically scored third in the world, but I wasn't smart enough to pour enough coffee in the cups, and therefore I got disqualified. Meaning, I should not win this competition, right? I'm not good enough to do that, and I can live with that. Second part, more on a bigger, broader spectrum, and a few things that I learned that I think can be relevant for you guys. Starting off by congratulating Emmy and Team Switzerland and Tetsu and everyone involved. Amazing job, super interesting coffee, just great stuff. I'm really happy to see that she won. She did an awesome job and is really a part of setting the bar for quality here. Now, a few other points on the competition in general. So, one of the things that I did that I believe I was the only one doing, but I'm not 100% sure, is that I'm grinding on stage. So one of the things that I've always been not frustrated, but I've been looking for in this competition is that I wanted to turn into a brewing competition, right? It's still today, and after the reflection from this year is the same as well. It's very much a green coffee competition, right? Both in terms of quality, but also in terms of what you're pitching. So an average presentation this year in Brazil would be 4 to 5 minutes, the competitors just talking about the green coffee, standing very much like I do, watching the judges, and just basically talking about how the coffee is picked, processed, whatever, right? And I believe that this competition needs to go into a focus where we actually brew coffee, right? I want to do different things. I want to make sure that I actually brew coffee during those 10 minutes, and I don't just stand talking for 7 minutes and then brew a cup of coffee. Interestingly enough, which I think for all of you that are thinking about, for example, grinding on stage as well, it's interesting because grinding on stage is not going to give you a higher customer service score. Based on the feedback that I got, for example, the 3 sensory judges has nowhere in their protocol where they're actually saying that that's a good or a bad thing to do. It's simply not incorporated in what they're scoring. However, the head judge are also allocating 20 points in total in the competition. And within those 20 points, I believe grinding on stage is actually an advantage. So you can get extra points from the head judge, but you cannot get extra points for the sensory judges. In fact, it can actually take away from your customer service points as you're not putting enough attention to the judges. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'm going to leave that unsaid. But most importantly, this is how it actually is. So for those of you that go down that road, keep in mind that the amount of extra points you actually get from grinding on stage are tiny, 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 and perhaps not worth the risk because your coffee can end up tasting worse. Plus, the grinding process can actually be incorrect to some degree, right? So keep that in mind when you're structuring the presentations. Furthermore, it's very much still focused on the best cup will win. I totally believe that, right? So if you have a really tasty cup of coffee, you're gonna be up there in the very top. There's some other reflections here versus innovation in brew method. I brought my own brewer that I created, new pouring method, new everything. Is that an advantage? Well, not necessarily. Again, it comes up to the 3 sensory judges have nothing in their score sheet that actually allows them to score you higher because you're brewing your coffee in a certain way. You do need to explain why you're brewing your coffee in a certain way and connect that to the taste of the cup. But there's nothing in there that is actually scoring you higher just because you're innovative. Will the head judge score you higher because of that? Maybe. There's a tiny bit of points there. But again, that's only 20 points. It's a very, very small part. So don't worry too much about being innovative, which, that sounds shit saying it, because to be fair, it's the World Championship. We should be innovative, right? The whole process is where can we figure out new stuff? And when I look at the Barista Championships, I get really excited because I see a bunch of innovation. When I look at the Brewers Championship this year, frankly, we all do the same thing. It's starting to become a tiny bit boring, right? However, that's very much a reflection of the score sheet. If we don't have a score sheet that allows and actually give some kind of advantage to innovation, then we won't be pushing for it because it's too risky and the judges are not looking for it. So there's a combination here that I think is really interesting. Moving on, what I can say as well is that the back end system, like backstage areas, compulsory training, grinders, everything worked amazingly well. The structure of the competition was great. They answered all of your questions. Everything actually worked exactly the way they should. I'm really happy about that, and as a competitor you can feel really happy and confident with the fact that the structure behind you is actually very, very good, right? So don't stress out about that, just go there, have fun. Overall the process is really exciting, even though again I think we should be pushing a bit more innovation in the future because this competition needs to go somewhere else. And the only thing that happened this year is that the level of fermented coffees just increased and increased and increased and increased. I don't think it's one single actual clean coffee in the competition. There is a lot of really tasty fermented coffee as well. I'm not saying they're not, but let's be fair, the only pitch we come with this year is that we have a new varietal and we have a new processing method, right? It's so little about how we're brewing coffee and how we're interacting with that. I still love, for example, Agnieszka's presentation in Barista when she won in Amsterdam because she connects that with innovation plus customer service plus relating to the guests that we have coming into our shops on a daily basis, right? So it's a presentation that is not just amazing and it's super tasty, it's also something that is relevant for the industry and it's pushing our forward, and that's what I'm looking for in brewers. So that was a bit of a summary. We're gonna do some individual videos after this, more about brewing, more about the April brewer that we created as well, so that will come. I'm not sure if my actual presentation will be available to watch from the competition because there was some kind of hiccup there when they actually recorded it. If it will be, we're gonna link it down here. As always, comment. We're more than welcome to have that. Do April support people competing? Yes, we do if you're training with us, otherwise we don't. However, we're always happy to help. Keep in mind, competing is about learning. You can't go in there with the ambition of, okay, I need to win, otherwise this was a waste of time. Because that's not true, right? Because there's a lot you can learn, there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of amazing people backstage during these competitions. It's just a great experience in general. So don't turn this into some kind of life and death, black and white story, because it's not. It's about you going in and improving your brewing skills, improving your customer service skills, and having a lot of fun and meeting some great people during that time. So relax a little bit, practice harder, practice smarter, and this is gonna be an amazing experience for you. With that, as always, thank you guys for watching. Any comments, just let us know. Share if you like it. Thank you very much.